Well, hello, friends, and congratulations. It's Friday. You made it. It's been a long week. Some of you had a difficult week. For others, it's been a great week. But regardless, our Lord has been faithful to continually reassure us, to invigorate us when we were, down, or maybe we were discouraged and need a little bit of, a little energy, but also to reassure us that He has a plan for our life and that He is working out that plan perfectly. And that's one of the things we're going to see today in Acts chapter 23. There's a lot going on around before and after the text I'm going to read, but just for the sake of time, and of course, I want you to get into the Word, but we're going to read verses 10 and 11. The dispute became violent. The commander feared that Paul might be torn apart by them and ordered the troops to go down, take him away from them, and bring him into the barracks. The following night, the Lord stood by him and said, "Have courage. For as you have testified about me in Jerusalem, so it is necessary for you to testify in Rome." All right, so that dispute that's talking about here, Paul has gone to Jerusalem. He has been falsely accused by the Jews of taking a Gentile into the temple court, the part where the Gentiles could not go into. That's created a total rage, but really all it's done is opened up a doorway for those who hated Paul to try to get rid of him. And so the commander has asked that he be brought before the Sanhedrin. He said, "Hey, I want to know what's going on here." And so he said, "Hey, convene the Sanhedrin, and I'm going to bring him to you, and I want him to stand trial. I want to hear what your charges are against this man." So Paul's now before the Sanhedrin, and and in a very in a moment of great discernment, he knows that he's got two different groups going on here. He's got Sadducees, which he was not a part of, and he has the Pharisees, which he was one. And he knew that their theology differed to the point where he could mention one thing, resurrection of the dead, and that would create such a dispute among them that they would be at odds with one another and really forget about Paul, to the point that the Pharisees begin to argue for Paul. How do you like that? So in this particular instance, it's almost like they're going to rip him apart. And the commander is like, "Oh, no, this is not going well. Go get him before they tear him limb from limb." And here we have Paul doing exactly what God said he would do. He would testify about him in Jerusalem. And we see the commander being a means by which God is using to protect Paul, and of course all of his cohort, all of the different soldiers under his leadership, as a means to protecting Paul. But then we come to verse 11, and verse 11 should be a reassuring verse for us. It says, "The following night the Lord stood by him and said, 'Have courage. For as you have testified about me in Jerusalem, so it is necessary for you to testify in Rome.'" Now, the reason why this was so, I'm going to use the word easy, and I don't mean that to its fullest extent, but the reason why it was easy for Paul to believe what the Lord was telling him is because this was not the first time that he had received an affirming word of, "Hey, you're going to do this, and I'll be with you." If you go back to his time in Corinth, Acts chapter 18, I believe it is, 17, 18, you see Paul being reassured by the Lord, "Hey, don't be afraid. I have many people in this city." He was tired, maybe felt a little bit humiliated, frustrated, all those things. Paul said, "Hey," Jesus appeared and said, "Hey, I have many people in this city. You just keep preaching the gospel." And indeed, for a total of 18 months, he stayed there and faithfully preached the gospel. Then we were told in Acts 20 that he was going to go to Jerusalem. And in going to Jerusalem, he's going to face persecution, that there were difficult times ahead of him. Several different testimonies came, but that was the one that the Spirit spoke to him and said that. And now here he is doing exactly what God said he would do, and the promise of his protection. Not the absence of persecution, but the promise of his protection. And so because Paul had experienced this time and time again, now when it comes, he knows that he can trust the Lord. That despite all accounts to the contrary, that there's no way I'm going to make it out of this. The Jews are furious, and just like they did with Jesus, they'll do the same with me. Paul seemed to have no fear and no concerns that the Lord will indeed keep his word. That he, just as he testified in Jerusalem, the Lord will see that he makes it to Rome. Well, what's fascinating is that in the very next verse, we're told that you got a group of about 40 who are putting themselves underneath a curse. That if we're not going to eat a thing, we're not going to eat or drink until Paul is dead. That's how serious they are about taking him out. So isn't that fascinating that right next to the promise of our Lord that, "Hey, I have a purpose for you in Rome too. Don't worry, Paul." You got men, sinful men, no doubt motivated by the fallen nature and in the evil presence of Satan himself, being compelled to make an oath, put themselves under a curse. "Hey, we're going to take him out." But it's just a reminder that we can trust the Lord. When the Lord gives us his assurances, we can trust him. We can depend on him. Because the Lord's going to use a pagan commander, a Roman commander who has no skin in the game in terms of his faith. He's just simply trying to make sure the Roman, his those in a commanding position over him don't get upset with him. It doesn't cost him in regards to the governors and the various ones who are in authority in that region. So God's using him as a means of protecting Paul. And it's one more reminder to us that when the Lord gives us a commission, when the Lord gives us a mission, maybe he's spoken to you this week and said, hey, I want you to speak to so-and-so. The Spirit of God's put that on your heart, and you felt led every day to go and speak to them, but you're afraid of what the repercussions might be. Maybe they won't, maybe they won't be as friendly to you anymore. Maybe word will get to some of your other coworkers, and they might think less of you. All the different repercussions that might come out of that have caused you to be fearful and to shy away from doing that. Let's let this example of the Apostle Paul, I would dare say his possibility of being persecuted, his possibility of even losing his life are much greater than ours. And yet he didn't shy away. He didn't stop. He trusted the Lord. He believed what the Lord said would take place was indeed going to take place. And he just continued to serve him faithfully. And let the same be true for us. Well, friends, I pray you'll end the week well. And I pray we'll start the next week well. And what do you mean by that? Well, Sunday is the first day of the week. Saturday is Sabbath. We understand that in creation. Sunday is the first day of the week. It's also when the followers of Jesus went back and found the tomb empty. That's why we celebrate on Sunday, to once again remember the empty tomb and to celebrate a risen Lord. And it's important that we make that a priority, meaning that not just a small group experience, but a time of worship and praise in corporate gathering, the collective gathering of the saints for worship and celebration of Jesus. So make that a priority. Make the commitment now that you will be here physically gathered if possible this Sunday, 8:30 worship. Connect groups 9:45. Again, worship coming around 11. And now if physical ailments will not allow you to be present with us, hey, join us on our live stream. That's one of the reasons why we try to keep that tool up and going, is so that it'll be available for you to be able to receive the word and be able to participate in a way in worship. Well, I love you, friends. Let's end the week well. Let's go out today determined to live sin.